Hey everyone, today we're going to be covering a little bit more of a review on what lists are and then also get into different operations you can do on lists. So let's get started. So just kind of a refresher on sequences, one of which a list is. Sequences have indices, which means they have multiple indexes, which really just means each item that you have in a list has a very specific position that has a specific number. And so this number is called an index, tells us where an item is in the list. The first index is 0. It's not 1, it's 0. Programming is a little weird when we start a lot of things with 0. So the first position is position 0. And then the last position, or the last index, is the number of items in the list or sequence minus 1. So if you have 3 things in a list, the first index will be 0, then there will be an index of 1, and then there will be an index of 2, and that's the last index because you have 0, 1, and 2, 3 items in your list. And that's kind of it. And so lists are things that we covered a bit last time. So they are sequences like strings. So you know how strings are a bunch of characters kind of in a specific order. Lists are kind of the same idea. There's a bunch of items in an order, except they're not necessarily just characters. They can be different types of data. And also lists are mutable. And so in this class, we will be covering lists that contain just a single type of element. So a list that only contains strings, a list that only contains ints, so on and so forth. Technically, you could mix and match, but we're not going to do that in this class. So that's kind of the asterisk over here. And again, the syntax, you have those square brackets, square bracket, then all the items that you have in the list in order. So from left to right, starts at index 0, goes on, finishes at the last index, all the way to the right. And so that's kind of how you write a list. Name of the variable over here on the left, the actual items you want to put in the list on the right. And also lists can contain any kind of data, so whether it's a string, int, float, et cetera. And so that's kind of what lists do. And so lists have a bunch of built-in methods or built-in actions that you can do on a list. And so this is sort of an overview of a couple of them. Each one has a specific function. So append adds a value to the end of a list, sort sorts list, and so on and so forth. And the next couple minutes, we'll be going through a few of those methods or actions. And so the first one is sort. It's kind of self-explanatory. It sorts the elements in the list. Something to note is that it sorts in place, which means it does not create a new list of sorted items. So for example, if you took a list like this and we chucked it into PyCharm over here, and then we printed the contents of the list. So for number in numbers, print number. And then we can also do end equals comma, so that they'll just be separated by commas instead of going new line. And then print separating line, because we're going to add more to that. So if we just print the contents of what we have in our list right now, I could have done that better. Hold up. Let's try that again. So we have 3, 5, negative 12, 40, all in that order, printed out perfectly fine. But if we call sort, that doesn't create us a new list. How we call this is literally you take the name of the list, so in this case numbers, dot sort, open parentheses, close parentheses. And so it sorts in place, which means it doesn't create a new list. You're not saying something, something, something equals sort. You're just saying, this is my list, sort my list. And so if we repeat again, after we sorted it, so we create a list, we print everything in the list in order. This is for formatting purposes. Then we sort the list. Then we print the same list again. So if we run that now, what you're going to get is the first time you print numbers, it's 3, 5, negative 12, 40. The second time you print it, it's negative 12, 3, 5, 40. In both these situations, we're saying for number in numbers. So the first time we printed the list up there, and the second time we printed the list over here. We didn't do anything different. We're printing the same list, which is stored in the variable numbers. But after we call sort on it, the order in which all these numbers appear is different. And so this is just something to keep in mind. Sort does not create a new list. If you do something like new, if you forget and you try to create a new list by saying numbers.sort is going to be a new list, and you have something that goes new number equals numbers.sort, and in this case the step is trying to create list of sorted elements, and then instead of printing the original numbers list, we print new numbers. We try to do that again. You'll actually get something like this error over here that says none type object is not iterable, which means you can't loop over, it doesn't know how to loop over new numbers. It's saying new numbers is not a sequence. It's not a bunch of things. And that's because if instead of printing out all the elements of the list, we just tried to print the list. Like that, we get something that's none. And this is something that's clearly not a list. This is Python's way of representing the concept of nothing. And so because numbers.sort does not give you a new list, new numbers holds basically this blank value. And so it's not a list. You can't do list things on it. And so your code will break if you try to create a variable out of numbers.sort. So TLDR, don't do it. Sort's in place. So just call sort like name of list dot sort. It sorts the original list. So the next time that you go through the original list, it's in sorted order. Does not create new list. Very important, common mistake. So that's sort. If you're wondering how Python knows how to sort things, it depends on the type. So numbers, it's obviously based on value. So negative numbers go first and then kind of goes up. And then strings, it'll sort alphabetical. So if we did something like this, then we print we just print the list like that. Then we get boba coffee instead of coffee boba. To really show you that difference, if you want to print the whole list just straight up like this, you can just straight up print the list instead of for looping through all the elements. If you're processing each one of the elements, then you can for loop. But if you just want to print, you can also just literally say print, open parentheses, name a list, close parentheses. So first print, then we have sort, then we have second print. So to really show that off, we started off with coffee of boba, then we sorted the list in place, then we printed the drinks list again, then we got boba coffee because alphabetical. So reverse, second action that we're covering today, reverses the order of the elements. So like sort, it changes the original list, it does not return a new list. So if we, going back to that, if we reversed drinks, there. Yep. Original, sorted. Drinks dot reverse. Open parentheses, close parentheses. Don't forget the parentheses. Third print. Reversed, sorted. So we started off coffee boba, then we sorted it boba coffee, then we reversed it coffee boba, or if we wanted to really change it up, throw a third element there so you can really see what it looks like. So original coffee, boba, tea, sorted boba, coffee, tea alphabetically. We reverse the sort, then we get tea, coffee, boba. So that's reverse. Pretty straightforward. So all the three things that we've covered so far, sort, or we only covered two, sorry, sort and reverse, those edit the list in place. They change the original list. They do not create a new list. So that's what those two do. Then we're going to delete, which is going to look a little bit different from previous. So previously how we did it, how we invoked each of those actions was we had the name of list, then we had a period, then we had the name of the action that we wanted to do. Delete is going to look a little bit different. And so what delete does is it removes an element from the list based on the index. And so you don't specify the value of the element you're trying to remove from the list, you specify the index. You're saying this, whatever item is at this position, I want you to take it out. And so the way you call it is by saying DEL, then the name of the list, then open square bracket, the value, or sorry, the index that you're trying to remove an item from, then a closed square bracket. So let's say we wanted to remove coffee from the list. So coffee right after we reverse the list is right here. So that's index 1. So we're going to remove at index 1, or remove the element or object at index 1. So sorry, I should say delete. So for that, you say DEL, and then the name of the list, which is drinks, and then open square bracket, and then I'm going to put in the index 1 because that's the one I want to remove. Then I'm going to print the list again, move to coffee, printing the list, and we're not printing the word coffee. And so, or I should really say removing index 1. So after we reverse sorted, we had tea, coffee, boba, then we removed whatever was previously at index 1, which was coffee, so we removed that, and then boba slides down and is now the new value at index 1 because the previous one disappeared. And now instead of having a list of 3 objects or 3 elements, you have a list of just 2. So you remove the element that was previously at index 1, everything else after that slides down, and then you have 1 less item than you did previously. And so remember that delete is based on index, so we don't type in the word coffee over here, we type in the word 1. If you forget and you try to do something like this, you'll have errors. You'll have this error that says list indices must be integers or slices, not str, and that's because, again, it's based on the position of whatever element you're trying to remove, not the actual value of the element itself. So that's delete. So you can also remove an element based on using an action called remove. And so this also will remove an element from your list, but the difference between remove and del is remove removes by value, delete removes by position or deletes by position. So remove, you can specify the value that you're trying to remove. So let's say if we wanted to remove tea, which would be a sad day because I love tea, but remove tea. That was horrible, sorry. So you have drinks, then dot remove, and then we specify tea. So we're not specifying the position of tea, which is now position 1. We're specifying the actual value itself that we're trying to remove. And so after that, remove tea, drinks, and I'm going to change the previous one to deleted. So we can really see what that looks like. So in remove, we specify the object that we're looking for, which is t. And so after that, if it finds the string t in the list, which it does over here, then it will remove it. And then you have now this very sad, like lonely list of just 1 object, which is boba. Because what remove does is it looks for the first element in the list that matches whatever's in the parentheses, and once it finds it, it removes it. If you type in something that doesn't belong in the list, or that doesn't actually exist in the list yet, you'll get something like this, which is remove X. X is not in the list, so you got to make sure that whatever, if you're removing based on the value of the element, which in this case is whatever string it is, that value must exist before you try to remove it, because otherwise you'll get this lovely, lovely red error. So let's change that back to just removing T. So that's kind of the difference. Remove eliminates based on whatever is stored at a like in the list. Delete deletes by whatever is at a specific position in the list. So that's kind of the difference between the two of them. Index, that's the next one we're going to cover. Index is used to find the position of a specific element. So index will return the first position of where a value occurs. So after doing all this lovely, lovely stuff, let's reinitialize our list by adding all those values back so we can work with them. And so let's use index. You can use index to find basically the position of, if you're looking at a list to see, hey, does this list contain a specific value? And where does it contain it at? That's what you would use index for. So let's use index to find position of T. So let's create a variable called T index equals, so drinks dot index, and then we're going to put in T. So index is based on, you're searching for a value, so whatever value you're searching for, you put in between the parentheses, and if it finds that value, it will return you the position in the list. So let's see if we can get that out. So print position of T is T index. And so because this is going to be an index value, this is going to be a number. So we run that right now. We get the position of T. Oh, I should print that list out. So after we recreated that list, we're looking for the position of T. So it's checking to see where does this element of the string T, where is it located? And so it checks index 0. It always starts at the left. It always starts at index 0. It kind of works its way up. So it starts at index 0. Is coffee the same as tea? No, it's not. Moves on to index 1. Is boba the same as tea? No, it's not in this case. Moving on, it goes to index 2. Is tea the same as tea? And yes, it is. And so T index holds the value of 2. Now, if you're trying to use this index to find something that does not exist in the list, so let's say soda. Soda doesn't exist in our list. What happens? Does it scream and yell and things like that? Well, it does. So kind of the same idea as remove. You got to make sure that the thing exists. So we can slice a list just as we did with strings. And so slicing is this concept to say, I only want part of my sequence, or I only want part of a list. And so you can use slicing to get just a section of your list or a section of your sequence. And so the syntax for it is you do sum list, start position, colon, and position within the square brackets. So kind of the same as a lot of things that we've covered so far involving a start and an end position. The start position is the first position you start at. The end position is the number that you end before, the position that you end before. So you start at start position and then go up to, but don't include the value at end position. And so to access parts of list by slicing, as you can see over here, you say, here's where I want to start, here's where I want to end, before, right before. And so if you slice from 1 to 3, then you get whatever's at index 1, which is cat. Then you get whatever's in index 2, which is emu. Then you stop before index 3, which is bird. So slice returns you a, or the slice operation returns you a brand new list with only those two elements in there. So there's cat and there's emu. Cat is at index 0 because remember that's the first position. Then you have emu, which is at the second position. And it returns you a list of only those things. So if we sliced our drinks list, so something like, I'm going to change that back to tea so we can carry on. So slice list to get, maybe we just want to get the first two elements of this list. So because this creates a new list, we need to store that in a variable. So I'm going to call it list slice is equal to name of list, which in this case is drinks, and then square bracket, colon, and then in the beginning, the first position we want to get at, which is position 0. Then the position we want to end before is 2, which means we want whatever's in index 0 and index 1. And because that's the last index before 2, that's where we stop. So now if we print slice of original list, then you're going to get over here. And so once we print that out, then you get a brand new list, which is coffee and boba. And so just to really illustrate that list slice is a completely brand new list, whatever you do to the original drinks list will not affect list slice. So if you do drinks.sort, print sorted list, which is now drinks. After it's been sorted, then you print slice list, which is list slice. And we try that again. You can see that this slice over here, this slice over here, nothing's changed. It's coffee, then boba. The original list here, then after we sorted it, looks like this, which is not the same as this. So list slice is a completely brand new list that you're creating from that slice operation. Once you create it, it's completely separate from your original list. So whatever you do to drinks will not affect whatever's in list slice. So that's it for that. So yada, yada, yada. Gives you those lists, creates a new list. If you want a couple of slicing shortcuts, kind of similar to a lot of things, if you don't provide certain values, then Python will automatically put in defaults for you for certain things. So if you don't put anything in front of the colon, so let's say we just said :2 within those square brackets, then it will automatically start at 0 as your first index and go up to, but not include whatever is over here, which is 2. So it'll automatically default to 0 in the front. If you don't specify anything at the end, it'll automatically go through the entire, all the way to the end of the list. So if we started at 0, or let's get more interesting and start at 1, but then don't put anything after the colon, it'll start at whatever's at index 1, which is boba, and then go up to the end of the list, which is just boba and tea. And then if you wanted a brand new list, which was a slice of the whole list, so everything from start to end, you just don't put anything in front or behind the colon. And so slice of the original list is you get everything if you don't put anything in the front and anything in the end. And so that's kind of an overview on list and slicing.